All right, welcome back. So someone was asking on Piazza about choosing APIs. I know you're all looking for domains and topics to work on for the project. It's due, the description of what is it you're going to be working on, it's due this Sunday. And some of you were looking through the different APIs and noticed that many of them return different formats, right? And so some of you were asking, well, how does that play into the criteria of choosing what API? Now, there's quite a few formats out there. The two main ones that you'll find are JSON and XML. We would like to I'd like to just talk about some of the criteria that you would use to be able to choose one API versus another. So just let's think about what happens when a browser asks for a JavaScript or a JSON piece of information. So for instance, here's your browser, right? And here's the server. Now the server can't control who the browser is. Right? It could be any browser in the world accessing your server. So when it asks for a piece of document, and for instance an HTML file, right? It goes and fetches it and copies it locally on your machine, all right, and then it renders it, right? It renders it. No problem there. It's static. It doesn't execute anything, right? It gets interpreted. Now it gets a little bit different when you ask for a piece of JavaScript. You ask for JavaScript. Again, it downloads. And the way the browser interprets this is that it immediately executes whatever's in here. Right? So if you have any variables, any code outside of a function, right? If it's declared at the global space, it executes immediately. All right, and that's one of the problems that we have, right? That if it gets executed immediately, it might be overriding or overloading or just rewriting on top of things that we might have already declared, right? And we're certainly going to have to deal with that by declaring things inside of modules, creating our own namespace, and so on and so forth. But I just want to point out the fact that it fetches a JavaScript and it executes immediately, right? Whatever's in there. Right? Not only does it parses functions and whatnot, they get declared. But if there are any functions, and I'm sorry, any variables that you declare at a global space, any algorithms that are, any for loops, if statement, whatnot, that are declared outside of a function in the global space, they execute, right? And that's very important. We're going to come back to it in a minute. Also, the browser makes a mental note here in its domain object model. It makes a note where was this JavaScript downloaded from. Right, from what domain was it downloaded from? Right, so if it was downloaded from abc.com, right, and from another server, you might have different servers, right? Maybe you download Bootstrap from bootstrap.com, you download Angular from Google, you download some other libraries from different servers. You can download from anywhere, right? So the server keeps track on when you download the JavaScript, if from where did you download it from? And it enforces a security policy that JavaScripts that were downloaded from a particular domain cannot make network connections to any other domain. Right? They can only make network connections back to its original domain. Yes? Right? And if a JavaScript, a piece of code that you downloaded, and it tries to make a network connection to anywhere else, right? You'll get an exception saying cross-domain scripting. You're trying to cross from one domain to the other, right? And this has been in place for forever. So the idea was to not allow the fact that I'm trusting a particular HTML or a particular piece of application from a particular domain, and not having it communicate with something that I don't trust, right, implicitly. Make sense? Right? Today, with the advent of folks having tons of data out there that they want to make available to other folks, that they're making all their databases they're exposing it through APIs. There has been an effort at say, well, how do we get around this? How do we get around this? If I have this JavaScript running on my browser, but the data lives somewhere else, how can I get at it? Right? The classical way to do this is to use a proxy, a server proxy, which basically is that a piece of code that runs on the browser goes back to its own browser and say, hey, I need the weather for tomorrow. And so the proxy says, ooh, I know, I'll go to weather.com and fetch the weather information from there. I get the information, and then I send it back to the original browser. And there's no break. We're not breaking any rules there, right? We're always just communicating to the original domain, right? And it's the server that is making this connection because the server doesn't have the same security policies that you have from the browser. Everybody okay? All right. This is the classical way of doing it, and it's still a very legitimate way to do it. Now, newer APIs are saying, but wait a minute, no, we're making this huge effort at making our application run on the browser. They're more responsive. They have immediate feedback to the user. A lot of the user interface lives here. There's a lot of graphing and lots of logic here. I don't want to have to go through this. Is there a better way? So they looked for a different way, right? So some folks thought of the idea of the following idea, right? Since if I go to fetch a piece of JavaScript code, and remember what happens when you fetch JavaScript code, it executes immediately. Yes. Notice that the browser is not. The browser can download JavaScript from anywhere, right? So the browser can make connections to anywhere, right? Just download one JavaScript from here, one other JavaScript from anywhere. It is the JavaScript source that is not allowed to make network connections on its own. Yes? Right? And so an idea came out to fool, right, the browser into thinking that these connections were, you're just downloading a regular JavaScript file. Okay? The technique is the following: when you have a script node here, and it has a source code, the browser does what it normally does, right? It looks at the source code, it goes and fetches that file, it downloads it, and it executes it. Yes. So we came up with libraries, JavaScript libraries, that can dynamically generate these tags, right? Just like we dynamically generate anything we want, right? We can generate H1s, we can generate paragraphs, we can generate content, we can inject anything we want into the DOM. Yes? Right? We can also inject script tags with whatever source attribute we want, right? So now we have a programmatic way to say, well, choose any domain that you want and go and fetch that JavaScript file. But notice that we're downloading a JavaScript file, right? Not data. We're not making a network connection. We're basically going through the browser, say, hey, browser, you go and fetch this JavaScript file. The browser says, ooh, okay, I'm just downloading a JavaScript file. I'm not making the code is not making its own network connection. All right. The problem. So anyway, so it gets downloaded. It gets downloaded, whatever dynamically I want to ask for, and it gets executed. It executes. It runs. It runs. Right. But the problem that we're trying to solve is that I really want to make a network connection. I don't want a JSON object. I just want a raw JSON object, not a JavaScript file. Right? JavaScript files can have functions and variables and whatnot. They don't have the JSON formats that we're looking for. Yes. Right. Instead, that JavaScript file can have variables, functions, loops, and whatnot. What the community came to consensus is that, hey, you know what? Let's make a deal, okay, to try to use this loophole. Let's try to use this loophole. If we can agree, right? If the server and the client agrees, right? I'm going to ask. I'm going to use this technique, right? I'm going to pass you locally here, a function foo. All right, I have a function foo. I'm going to declare function foo. I'm going to pass you the name of this function, right? In the URL, I'm going to question mark callback equal foo. I'm going to pass this to the server, and the server is going to write this dynamically, a function here. It's going to write a function that says foo, that's going to invoke my function that lives on my browser, right? And it's going to pass me the data, right? So this function gets written into the file. It gets downloaded into my local space. Yes. And since it's a function call, it executes locally on my space foo with the data, and this calls my local function foo. It passes me the data. You see that, right? This is a hack. All right, this is a hack to overcome this security, right? But it only works if the server agrees, right, to generate this for me. Okay, that gets downloaded and then executed. Okay, this mechanism is called JSON P. Right, P for padding. Right, basically, it's I'm going to generate the JSON that I would have sent you anyway, but I'm going to pad it with some, some additional meta information that will circumvent this security restriction. Make sense? Not all servers support this, right? Not all servers support this protocol, JSONP. It's really a hack, right? But it allows you to, from within a browser, be able to your code gets downloaded from your own domain, but then you can access maybe Yelp or IMDb or any other server that has agreed to use this hack. Everybody okay? Right? All right, so this is still widely used today, right? Newer servers are using a newer technique. Called CORS. I think it's cross-origin request sharing, right? Which basically says, right? If, for instance, newer servers like Tomcat, what is it, 7 or 8? I think from Tomcat 7 and on, they start supporting these features. So, for instance, the browser is going to be allowed to be downloaded from one domain. The JavaScript is going to be allowed to download from one domain, and from here, it's going to be allowed to just go and fetch data from some other domain. If this server supports CORS, right? The server needs to be configured, and part of the configuration for the CORS support is that it has a list of trusted domains. What domain do you trust that it comes from, right? So this was downloaded from ABC. Do you trust, scripts that were downloaded from abc.com? If you trust it, then yes, I will accept the request and I will respond to you. Okay, and you can you can whitelist all the domains that you want to come from, that you can accept requests from, or you can open up to anyone and say, I don't really care, just I accept requests from anyone. You can say */*, right, and say I will accept requests from anybody. Right, I am just exposing this API, and anybody who wants it, here it is. Right, most Google APIs are configured this way. Right, so you can access all their APIs of accessing Google Plus, their photos, their all their Google Maps, everything, right? They allow you to just query all their search engines, right? You can do searches and whatnot, all their AI, all your AI APIs, they all accept requests from anybody because that's their business, right? Their business is that I have all this data, all this search, right? I just want to make it available to everybody. Make sense? Right? But again, you can restrict it as restricted as you want, or you can open it as much as you want. Yes? Right? And this is supported only on newer servers. Okay. So I posted on Kata that if you're looking for APIs, the criteria for choosing what APIs to use, ideally it supports JSON with cores. Ideally, it supports just JSON with cores. If it does that, then you can just write all your code here in the browser. So you can search for movies, search for restaurants, or search for whatever it is that you're searching. You can go to your API that supports cores, right? And you render everything without the intervention of the server. Okay. The next one that is also easy is jsonp. Again, you download if the server supports jsonp. Again, that's the second easiest. Again, you can just do the query from the browser without having to use the intermediate server. Right? The next one is jsonp, just plain old JSON with no cores, no jsonp. Doesn't support jsonp. With this, then you'll need to use a intermediate server. Right? Your queries will go to your local server. And then your server will just proxy, right? It'll be just a pass-through. It'll just pass it on to whatever servers you want to API you want to connect to. It'll come back with a response, and you send back the response to the browser. Yes, right? And this is the list is in an increasing level of complexity. Right? This is the easiest. This is also as easy, right? But it is a hack. It's still around. Up until everybody supports cores eventually, at some point. All servers will migrate to support cores, but not all of them are ready. So level commit. XML is also very widely used. Obviously, if you're going to use XML, you're going to have to parse it into JSON, right? And there's plenty of libraries that can do the conversion between the two, right? JSON that supports cores again, right? And then no cores, right? So if it supports XML with cores, you can do the logic here in the browser. If it doesn't support cores, you'll have to do it with a proxy. Make sense? All right? Okay. All right.